Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. Today, we are talking to a real legend, an iconic name in Miami, an iconic name in advertising, Zubi, head of Zubi Advertising for years. And today, as we were talking just before, he is giving back. He sits on the board of several nonprofits, Goodwill, United Way, Prospanica. Um, Joe has seen everything from the birth of Hispanic marketing to its explosion and then, selling the agency. He's a guy that has absolutely lived the industry. So, Joe, welcome. It's a real honor to have you here.
Thank you, Marcelo. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, let's dive right in. Somebody like you has had tons of decisive moments. Tons. I mean, like none of us get to be our age easily. So, let's dive right in. What was the decisive moment that created Joe Zubi?
Actually, there was two that come to mind. The first one, as some of you may know, my mother Tere Zubizarreta was the founder of Zubi Advertising in 1976, and when I graduated college in '82, I went to work for a general market agency here in Miami called Bieber Silverstein. I was there for 8 years. And the decisive moment, and we had done that on purpose. I had told my mother, "Look, I eventually will come and work with you, but I wanted to, cut my teeth at other agencies and also see the general market side of the business because she was specialized in Hispanic marketing." So in 1990, the one of the most decisive moments, the Pizza Hut account, which was separated by three different regions, the East, the West, and the Central, had three different agencies, and they were consolidating. National Pizza Hut wanted to consolidate their Hispanic marketing into one agency. So my mother called me over at Bieber Silverstein and said, we're going to pitch this. We're pitching against two very good agencies, one on the West Coast and one in Dallas. And, we have a chance to win the entire national Pizza Hut account. Are you ready to come over? And I said, you know what, let me think about it tonight and I'll call you, let's get together in the morning and have some coffee. So I went home that night and I realized that this is a turning point in my life because when I do this, if I do decide to do this, I'll never sleep again. And, someone else is not going to be paying me. We're going to have to make this on our own. It's not going to be just do your job, get a salary, get a bonus, come home, take your kids out to dinner. Now it's going to be a dedication to grow a business that my mother had started, 14 years ago. And, it was just starting to get on the verge of potential national recognition as a Hispanic agency. So I was obviously, sleepless that night. Next morning, I woke up and I had a cafecito with my mom, and I said, "Okay, let's do it. Let's go. I'll give my 2 weeks at Bieber, and let's get started on this pitch because we had, I think, three weeks to put a pitch together, and so we did. And I would go over in the evenings and pitch with them as I finished out my 2 weeks at Bieber, and we won the business, and that was our first national account uh, for Pizza Hut, and so that was a moment in my life where I realized my life as I know it has changed because now I'm not just an employee, I'm an owner. And with ownership comes huge responsibilities, including those that work for you and their lives that, rely on the salaries and the bonuses that we give them. So that obviously was the most decisive moment. And then the second most decisive moment was the moment that my sister and my mom and I sat down and said, we've this is the fourth offer we've gotten from different holding companies, and one of them specifically had come to us two times, and we said, it might be time to sell, and so that again was another major decision to stop being an owner, to stop being a boss, to really step down, and to let somebody else take over the agency was a very tough decision in my life.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, and just for the audience, I mean, like, you kind of underplay it. Tere Zubizarreta, which is a real name, which is very hard to pronounce for most Americans, but easy for me. Tere was, like absolutely iconic. I mean, she basically, with two or three other people, she invented the Hispanic market, period. That's it. There was,
Yeah.
there were maybe agencies before Zubi, but you know,
Well, there were the
the
the the champions, obviously Cunil, Eduardo Caballero, my mother,
Jose
people that
Manuel Cubas, who was
Jose
my
Manuel
boss
Cubas,
many
correct,
times.
right? Those were the ones at the very beginning. I remember they would go into meetings with American companies, and they would be the Americans would be shocked, like, who are these people? They're not like us. you know,
Yeah,
Cunil with his big cigar in his mouth.
yeah,
But
I didn't know Conil that well, but I owe my international career to Eduardo
yeah,
Caballero.
to
He's,
Caballero, yeah,
he's the guy who told Gordon Link to hire me for Mexico, and that began my real international career. Even though I had already worked by then in the
right,
Dominican Republic and Mexico, it just didn't count. It wasn't the same thing.
right,
McCann was, like a huge turning point, and it was all because of Eduardo. And of course, Cubas was, I don't know, my first boss in the Dominican Republic, my
yeah.
first boss in for the Hispanic market, my first boss for Latin America. So yeah, you know,
Yeah.
we've, we've
Another one that was a great champion and early started was Castor Fernandez.
yes,
Castor Advertising in New York was probably one of the better, one of the first bigger Hispanic agencies in New York City.
yeah. And then of course we had a guy that I worked with, not for Luis de Albertini, who my
Yeah.
father told me, be careful with that guy. So I'm sorry about that. So anyway, so you've established something from the very beginning, right? You were there present at creation. I mean, when Pizza Hut decided to consolidate, it was also a recognition that Hispanic agencies and the Hispanic market was really valuable. And then we've seen a lot of the changes, tons of changes. I have discussions about it all of the time with like Jim Bryan and stuff. So but of course, there are changes that we kind of see coming. Selling your agency is a change that you kind of see coming. It took you,
Mhm.
like some
Yep.
time, and but there's many other changes that absolutely catch us by surprise. You could have never imagined them. Give us a few examples. What changes have you experienced that in 1,000 years you would have never said, "Wow."
Well, the biggest one that affected the entire industry, not just Hispanic, was the dot-com crisis. When all of these different dot-coms came out, and two things were happening. One is obviously they were coming to the agencies to for us to advertise on their websites or on their portals, and there was a lot of them that were built specifically for the Hispanic market. So they were, saying, we can reach, they were asking ridiculous amounts of money for, advertising on their portals. But the other thing that was happening, which bit a lot of agencies in the ass, is those portals were getting those agencies to advertise the portal itself, so that people would be aware of the portal. And they didn't have, and when they went bust, a lot of agencies were stuck holding the media bag. They had bought media time for these portals, and I'm not going to mention names, but a lot of dot coms that were advertising on Univision or on the radio or in the print ads, they didn't have the money to pay the media, and the agencies obviously at that point were doing probably 50% up front, or pay as you go. So a lot of agencies got caught with debt. Fortunately for us, we didn't take on any dot coms as an advertising client, but we did get approached by a lot of them to advertise on them for our clients. And the negotiations were very tough, Marcelo, because there was no benchmark. There was no recognition of really who's watching or who's interacting with these websites and these portals. So it was a very interesting and a shocking time, because we were all kind of you know, running around in the dark with our tails cut off, and not even knowing, how do you measure this? I mean, this is not a Nielsen ratings. This is not, Arbitron. This is like completely random. Like, oh, we have, 200,000 viewers a week. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Well,
So,
I I will mention one name because that was also, to me, one of the symptomatic aspects of what you were mentioning. I will mention the name. I don't care. Fernando Espuelas.
Mhm.
If you remember him, he had some kind of website. I can't remember what it was. And he calls me up, and it was all of Latin America. And I was head of media for Latin America for Fulton and Belding. And he calls me up and says, well, we have X amount of viewers, blah, blah, blah. And, this is what I want. Money, like tons of money.
Right.
This is somebody who deals with Televisa, because I was dealing with Televisa, never mind on a daily basis, more like on an hourly basis. So I was managing big budgets.
Yeah.
So Fernando calls me up and says that. And I go like, big silence. Oh, this is the part where I am supposed to say, yes, I will give you the money. So he goes, yeah. Are you crazy? I'm not going to do it. Are you crazy? Like, I'm not going to pay that kind of money. You're not tested. We don't know your audience. We don't know what's going on. So I sympathize with that. And you were very lucky.
Yeah, no, we decided, there was two things that we did not get involved in, and I'm glad that we didn't. One was obviously promoting those upstarts, and the second was political advertising. We've never accepted a political candidate at Zubi to promote them. You know, we've just had seen bad experiences, seen things go sideways, and no matter who you promote, some clients not going to be in agreement with their policies, and
Yep.
so you're gonna cause friction with, and why bother, like, so that, that the dot-com thing was the biggest shock, like, oh my God, what is happening here. And then obviously from that grew the whole internet and the whole promotion of digital advertising, and so we were actually one of the first agencies. We opened as, we didn't open, we created a division called iZubi, which was four young kids that came to us with this idea of doing, finding a way for our clients to advertise, on the web and, on websites. And then, I mean, back then, I don't even think Facebook was probably no, MySpace was
Oh,
the
yes.
first one that was doing that social media stuff. I don't even think Facebook was around then. And so we said, okay, run with it. Let's look into it. Find some, websites that are, like Univision was creating a website. So now we could add the Univision website to our Univision media buy with their radio stations and their TV stations. And now we can add their website to it. So there was, very infants, very baby steps. But who knew, not even 10 years later, that
Yeah.
the entire industry would change to, where it is right now in digital versus, mass media broadcasting.
Oh, yeah. It's and however, in the Hispanic market, it's been kind of funny because television has done, fairly well. I mean, Univision has done really well. If you look at it, like 85% of their audience sees them all of the time. But I don't know. I get the feeling that Spanish language web doesn't do as well. And I had a conversation with Junia Parodi from Terra,
Mhm.
who's still a friend of mine, and it hasn't had the same power that English language internet has had. For example, there's no Facebook in
Mhm.
Spanish. There's no Instagram in Spanish. There's no TikTok in Spanish.
Yeah.
Um, it just hasn't done that well. And I think that's because of the, acculturation of easily one third of, what is commonly known as Hispanics in the US. But the industry has changed a lot. And there's a lot of interesting stuff happening, I think, on streaming video in the Hispanic market.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. Well, Steve, now you mentioned streaming. I mean, for the Hispanic market, I think streaming is very important because
Yep.
we, the traditional, the large percentage of our market works at very weird hours. Some of them work at night, some of them work afternoon jobs, some of, I mean, the standard 9 to 5 corporate America job is not necessarily where Hispanics are
Yep.
always working. So if they want to watch a show, they can watch it at whatever time they can through whatever streamers or streaming they're using.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, especially as you mentioned, people with weird hours. YouTube has become, and it is in the US, by the way, the
Mhm.
most watched video streaming service ever. Actually, YouTube and Netflix
Yeah.
have something like that, like 25% of all of the viewership, just two channels. But I've noticed that Hispanics, especially younger ones, YouTube and TikTok becomes their television, which is another huge change.
Yeah.
Actually, there is no more television. And it's a $40 billion business. I mean, this is not a small business.
Yeah.
But like most of my friends, and you see it, they don't watch that much television. Cable has been another one that we all thought, and I did the acquisitions for the DirecTV Mass.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was in the middle of it, and we were generating, like, I don't know, 350,000 calls a year or something like that. And it basically died. Cable, you know, just, kind of went away.
Yeah. No,
I
the
just find that incredible.
streaming has pretty much killed cable. People are, what do they call it? Cutting the cord. But it's we sold the agency roughly 10 years ago, more or less. And in those past 10 years, and people ask me, do you miss it? Do you miss, being engaged in it all? And I said, look, I'll always miss the creativity, the camaraderie, you know, late night brainstorming sessions and client presentations that you rehearse for, and you walk in there and you hope that you can win the account. Do I miss where creativity has gone? No, because I used to love to have a beautiful television campaign wrapped around some radio spots with a nice magazine campaign that goes with it. And now it's all, what are you doing on TikTok? Where's your, how are you getting your ads into YouTube to be seen? Because everybody's, blasting through them. So it's just become a very big challenge. If you ask most people now, tell me a TV commercial that you remember right off the bat. I don't know, the Geico Gecko, maybe. Like it's like you know, something that you saw in football. That's about it.
If you watch football, I mean, like the
Right,
ratings are nothing to write home about.
right.
They
So
have
yeah,
what, 6 or 7
that's
points. So anyway, I mean, it's as I said, at the beginning, and that's why I really wanted you on the podcast. I mean, you have seen all of that from a very privileged perch. One of the premier advertising agencies, I would say, not only in the Hispanic market, but if you look at it, it's a class agency for Florida. I mean, I think it transcended all of the U.S. Hispanic. So you've been absolutely privileged. So one last question in the couple of minutes we have left, because you've probably gone through this. You've hired people, you fired people, you had big teams and all of that. Let's say you yourself were hiring, somebody for a premier, a senior position, maybe, CMO, something like that. What would you tell you about older professionals, people who are over 55? Why hire them?
because there's a Spanish saying que el diablo sabe más por viejo que por diablo. Yeah.
I love that one.
uh, the devil knows more because he's old than because he's the devil, right? So,
Yes.
the knowledge that's inherent, like just even today to talking to you, I haven't had a conversation like this from specifically to the category or to the business in, wow, but it all just kind of comes back to you. I mean, it's all there. It's in my head. And, it's these people's experiences, their not just their work experiences, but their life experiences and understanding humanity, understanding the world, is invaluable to help the younger generation stay focused, because the younger generation right now has an attention span of 15 seconds. And so, they've got to find ways to stay focused in their world. And, I see it with my kids. My kids are a little older now. They're, in their 30s and late 20s. But, you look at, 25-year-olds right now, they're probably working. They're probably, crazy on their computer, crazy on their phones, always doing something, with the electronics, with technology, but are they sitting down to really listen to have conversations, to have a nice lunch or dinner without sitting there, looking at your phone, waiting for your food to arrive? We have the experience of personal human contact, and I think that that's important. That we have to share that with the younger generation, and we have to explain to them how relevant and important that's going to be successful for their success in the future. You've got to have personal contact. You've got to be able to carry on a conversation, to have a discussion without having to, LOL it or LMAFO it, whatever. It's like, let's have a real conversation. So, I think it's important to have people, at an older stage in life, mainly managing the brilliance of and the energy of the younger group.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I especially agree with Más sabe el viejo, el diablo por viejo que por diablo. I have lived up to that. So yeah,
Exactly.
and I can call El Diablo many times, so that's fine.
Well, with all the media you were buying at some point in your life, I'm sure they were calling you the devil.
Yes, absolutely. So, Joe, it's been a real pleasure. I had been looking forward to this interview for a long time. You are truly one of the great people in advertising today, and I sincerely thank you for joining us. So, I wish you the best on the boards. I am absolutely glad that you're, returning something. It
Yeah.
Not a lot of people do it, so it takes a very special person to say, I want to give back, and you do have a lot to give back. So congratulations, best of luck, and a big hug.
Thank you, Marcelo. It's great to see you still with the energy and the passion that you have for the business and engaged in this crazy world that we chose to make a career out of. So I
I know.
appreciate you continuing to do this and carrying the torch. And again, I'm always here for you if there's anything I can do. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.